What do you do when everything that once defined you is stripped away?
Well, I've hit a new milestone. I had some real serious health issues this last year, and this is why we build a reservoir of discipline. This is why we become anti-fragile, because you never know when you're going to have a substantial change the way your life goes. I ended up with heart problems this year.
From peak physical fitness to facing heart surgery, Brian Hill, one of the most respected minds in self-defense and personal growth, opens up about the scariest moment of his life and how he chose discipline, purpose, and faith over fear.
The one chance we have at true immortality is leaving this place better than we entered it. And the only thing to invest in is always people. Everything else will fade. And watching somebody grow and knowing they're going to help other people grow is a very fulfilling way to live your life. It is the ultimate of Jesus's teaching, to live the way and to be a part of it and to help people grow and to see the difference.
Tune in for a conversation that will challenge how you think about resilience, identity, and what it really means to keep going when life knocks you down. If you've ever questioned your path, this episode will help you find your footing again. If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Please subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple iTunes, and anywhere else that you can see me or hear my voice. If you don't want to miss another episode of Defenders Live, you can join our free community at defenders-live.com and become a free subscriber. Lastly, if you're looking for exceptional firearms or self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and look at their calendar to see what training is coming to you this year. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Lora Thorson, and tonight I have the great Brian Hill on my show. And I say the great Brian Hill because he is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's helped me so much through my journey, not only in firearms, but it has overlapped into other areas of my life, my fitness journey, and just mental health journey, really. And so he's been one of the people that has impacted my life the most. And so I just invited him back on the show just for another conversation. Who knows where it'll go? But I do want to invite you, if you have not seen the interview that I did quite some time ago, probably 2024, with Brian Hill. The thumbnail is called The Brian Hill Story. I would encourage you to go back and look at that video. It's one of the most impactful interviews that I've ever done, and really honestly changed my life to listen to Brian Hill's story. He's an incredible person of strength and character and someone that we can all learn from. So let's bring the great Brian Hill onto the show. Hey, Brian.
I feel like a magician now that I'm the great Brian Hill.
The great Brian Hill. I've
like
added that. Are you good? Are you good with being called the great Brian Hill?
I'll try to live up to it today.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to start with some of the things that have been going on in your life. I know that no matter what you've gone through in your past, as I referred to in the Brian Hill Story interview that I did, there's nothing that you've gone through that you have not learned from and grown from. Where are you at on your journey now?
Well, I've hit a new milestone. I had some real serious health issues this last year. And, this is why we build a reservoir of discipline. This is why we become anti-fragile, because you never know when you're going to have a substantial change the way your life goes. Mm-hmm. And despite being a super healthy athlete who has low blood pressure and a low resting heart rate, and no plaque in my heart and low cholesterol, I ended up with heart problems this year.
That's incredible. And you said something about, you started to say the word super something, and I thought you were going to say, in spite of me being superhuman or a superhero, but you didn't say that. Yeah.
Super healthy.
Super healthy. Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah. So not a superhero, but in some people's minds you are. And and you're someone that I have always looked up to for a variety of reasons. I'm just wondering, what kind of a journey has it been for you and Shelley? Like, what kind of side streets, if you will, have you gone down that you didn't quite expect? Or did it bring up some things that maybe that you hadn't quite dealt with, that you didn't see coming? Or did you just take it all in stride right from the get-go?
We often take for granted our health, and we say it's the most important thing. And when it goes away, it really radically changes your life. And I was in Utah working out, and it was at altitude, and I had a pretty serious arrhythmia happen, which I've had my whole life. I've been able to manage by doing a vagal maneuver, which is holding your breath and bearing down. But this one was different, and for the first time, I knew something was seriously wrong, that something wasn't healthy, and I went out and bought a watch that would track my movements because I spend most of my time by myself on the road. And I called my wife and I said, "Hey, listen, I've bought a watch, and if something happens to me, it's going to alert you." So it was a very difficult conversation. I jokingly refer to it as my death watch now, because I just realized how little everybody knows where I'm at most of the time as I travel. And to have that conversation with your wife is difficult. And I don't think it really hit her yet. She thought I was just, worried and concerned for her, and not, maybe I underplayed it with my health too. Who knows? I'm not the most expressive on that, but it was a very difficult conversation. And then as the problems grew, I had to sit her down and say, "Hey, listen, I can't sit at home. It's not my nature. I can't give up my life. I've given up," and we'll get into it, I'm sure, multiple things already. But I said, if something happens to me while I'm traveling and training, are you okay with that? And that's a tough thing to have. That's a difficult thing to say, that I love what I'm doing and I'm willing to take a risk, but are you willing for me to take the risk? And she has such unconditional love for me. She goes, "I understand. You would be a shadow of yourself if you stayed home, and just you need the challenge. You need to live." So that was a very difficult thing. I think it's really grown us closer, but we always figured it would be more on her side of the house because I'd always been I've been healthy. I never had any problems. This is my real first trip to the doctor that wasn't a surgery because I got injured.
And how long ago was this?
This happened. It happened in August, where I had the first big problem with my heart, and then in December they put me on a heart monitor. And like I said, I've been dealing with these arrhythmias my whole life, but my cardio's never been as good as it should been. I did a VO2 test in Colorado at the Olympic Training Center, and I just struggle a little bit cardio-wise as an athlete. But I just figured it was kind of because, I walk at 220. I'm just a bigger guy. Maybe I'm a bit lazy on cardio. But it turns out that maybe some other stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And, so the first time the doctor caught it on the heart monitor, which I felt was a little arrhythmia, they sent me to the hospital immediately. And I had SVT, which is supraventricular tachycardia in the upper heart, where it beats too fast. But I also had paroxysmal AFib, which means the bottom isn't pumping blood very well.
Wow.
So, yeah. And, it's so hard to get tests now. The doctor just hospitalized me so I could get the test in the hospital, which was incredibly useful. And then we started a journey that probably ends up tomorrow with a cardiologist, my last appointment in 6 months. And I've been through every test known to man and one surgery, and rebuilding my life and changing my diet and cutting caffeine out and becoming a cardio monster. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. But I never would have gotten it done without Shelly, because she can navigate the medical system. She was in the medical system, so we got things done really quickly. Yeah. It seems really slow since this is April, but it was incredibly, we've really, for American medical care, we've been on the fast track. So,
yeah, I can imagine how she's advocated for you. She is definitely an advocate by nature. Yeah. I'm curious to wonder, I called you the Great Brian Hill when you came on, and one of the things I love the most about you is your honesty. And so even though you're a superhero to so many people in so many ways, part of, for me, the thing that I love about you the most, here I go, is even though I know it's hard for you sometimes, you do have a vulnerability about you. You speak truth. And you might not always get mushy like I do when you're doing it, but you do have a level of vulnerability. And I think people think vulnerability means crying all the time. And to me, that's not what vulnerability is. It's someone who I believe is willing to be open and honest, even when it's hard. And I just wonder, was there ever a moment when you were going through any of that you just described, where you got a little bit emotionally hijacked, where there was a shot of fear that just really took you by surprise and you had to kind of reset yourself? Could you speak to anything like that? Because I think we could all learn a lot from that.
Yeah, there were two. One was more physical that ended up emotional, but I went for a ruck because I had no answers before this, and I went for a ruck, and I was on what I jokingly refer to as heart attack ridge now. And I had a big one. I had a real problem. It's like nothing I've ever had with my heart before. And this was after the hospitalization. But I was deep in the woods in North Georgia in the mountains by myself.
Wow.
And I had two choices. I really wanted to just sit down and not go any further. And it turns out later that, I had what they call an acute cardiac event, which means I was throwing protein out of my heart because the muscle was in trouble. And I just decided that if I waited and tried to call for help, I could be there for hours or I could walk out. And it would seem like a very clear choice, but one of the most difficult first steps I've ever taken, just to get my feet moving, keep myself going forward, because I was utterly alone in that moment. But because my life has been this embracing of suffering for meaningful events and making myself stronger, I was able to walk all the way to the truck, and I'm sure I got some divine help along the way. And I drove home, and then I was back to the hospital again, where we had multiple tests, and that was really a difficult moment physically. I don't think if I hadn't built this reservoir of training, I always expected the fight to be something different, but the real fight was don't die in the woods by yourself.
Wow.
Drag yourself out of here, keep going. And it came down to nothing more than just put one foot in front of the other, and that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, is just keep going. The other one was, there's been some, to know that I have an ascending aneurysm in my heart. So trauma, genetics, we don't know what it is, but the primary vessel leading from the heart is much bigger than it should be. And it's at 4.6 now. If it gets to 5 centimeters, it's probably open heart surgery for me. And we don't know why it happened, but it's like having a time bomb in your chest. So all the things I love, like fighting and jiu-jitsu and hitting the bag and lifting heavy weights, are off the table right now because I'm not supposed to strain. And some of the doctors told me I'm not supposed to lift more than 30 pounds, which is nigh impossible. You know how much bales of hay wearing. You can't even lift the grocery bags. And in traveling, my luggage is often 180 pounds.
Wow.
So it is what it is in that moment. And I kind of had to really face the depression monster because everything I viewed myself as being was taken away from me, and it could cost me my life. And if there was a dissection of the aneurysm, there's nothing anybody can do. And then the hard part for me too is, when I'm hosting, I'm often not near medical facilities that could do this. So, there's a risk involved in all this. It's better now because we've had it monitored for 6 months and it's been stable, but we just didn't know what was going on. And to have everything I loved taken away from me that I spent since I was 13 building, that was incredibly difficult. And I could feel the depression in the back of my head, that dark monster that claws at you. And I just had to make some new decisions. I had to redefine who I was going to be after that. I had to embrace the life that was still left to me and the purpose that I could have. And it didn't have to be what I had always done, but it could be something new.
Wow. It takes decades for some people to arrive at that conclusion, Brian, and you arrived at that conclusion in months.
Yeah. I don't know if we really have a choice, though. It's the procrastination that kills for all of us, and it doesn't take us decades to change our mind. It takes us decades to decide to change ourselves. As we talked about your workout, it was the getting started. It's not actually the doing of it. So the redefinition was just an embracing of a new thing, and I decided to be the model patient in that moment. My diet's pretty clean already, but now I'm super clean in my diet. I dropped 15 pounds, no more caffeine of any sort, type. Everything's without caffeine. I went and got a sleep apnea test, got on a CPAP machine, been 100% compliant. And then I've just really tried to take care of myself differently because, there's still a lot of life left. It's not the life that I had preferred, but this has happened to me multiple times now. And this is probably a residual of my COVID bout, almost killing me. We're seeing a lot of athletes that have this problem later in life after experiencing COVID. So can't be mad about it. It is what it is. But
was there a time where you were mad though, Brian?
I have a lot of anger sometimes. I wasn't as angry as I was. It was a devastating loss of a comforting friend. That could deal with it. So how do I deal with these emotions that I had when I could go hit the bag or go work out or define myself as a warrior, And I felt this before when I quit fighting. in my 30s, in my last weight cut, my wife watched me do it and she said, "You're killing yourself. You look horrible and I'm not helping you anymore," which was a wake up call.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to give that up. And I love that basically more than anything. And then I had to give up submission grappling, and then I gave up my gym. Mm-hmm. And it seems that, sometimes you have to sacrifice to gain. Mm-hmm. You have to let that go and do something more. So it was difficult, but it was more a deep sadness, as if I buried part of myself.
Grief.
Real grief in that moment. I had to find something that I was passionate about and purposeful, mm-hmm. because otherwise the hole was opening and pretty quickly. Yeah. And so, but, unlike some people, sometimes you have this moment, it always struck me, William April said this, that you're only seconds away from the victim pool. Mm-hmm. One injury, one gene altering, anything changing, and it's always struck me as that. And what happened was I just stepped to the other side, and suddenly I was a different person in that moment. But the core of who I am didn't really change. The spirit, the love of life, that didn't go away. Mm-hmm. It won't, and I refuse to live in fear. I will face it and do the best I can with it. And it doesn't mean I don't have my bad moments, mm-hmm. Because my job's pretty lonely sometimes, traveling amongst strangers, and you can really start to eat it yourself. But as I've always preached, and thank God I'm not being a hypocrite in this moment, is find your purpose, find something that you're passionate about, pursue it. And thankfully shooting is still enough of that for me, that it can fill those dark areas, and teaching even more so. Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe that's your life's purpose. And I really think whether you're on a range or not, that's your life's purpose. I think you're just a coach. You'll always be a coach. It's interesting that you talked about, I know anger in the past has been one of the biggest struggles that you've had. And so that's why I asked you, if you were angry about this and did you let that out? And the reason I asked you that is because I've learned recently that actually there is a healthy way to express these emotions. And in fact, not expressing them in a healthy way is detrimental. And so even though it's hard to do, it's hard for me to do, I've learned ways to get really pissed off sometimes in a safe place, in a healthy way, and just let it out and let it move through me. And the difference in doing that versus holding everything in and carrying it with me, I've found like a remarkable freedom in doing that. And I've always looked at my emotions as a negative thing most of my life, because as you know, they're always right behind my eyes. And, but I've learned now that in some ways they're a gift, because they can be expressed and I can move through them and I can move on from it. Like I almost feel bad now for people who can't or don't express emotions, because I imagine it being a heavy thing that they carry, even if they don't consciously know that that's what they're doing. So that's one of the things I've learned recently. There's a lot of things that I've learned, Brian, since I first met you. I think I first met you back in 2022. So it's been 3 years. It feels like it's been a decade for me. I don't know if I've just fast tracked these last 3 years or what has happened, but the growth that I've experienced because of people like you in my life has been just exponential. And I'm forever grateful to you for that. And I have learned more about myself, I think, than ever before. And one of the things that we talked about before the interview was you said something about, oh, you're looking really fit or something. I said, yeah, by Google standards, it says I'm now, an athlete form or whatever, there's the body fat percentages or whatever. And you said to me, that must have been really difficult. And I said, actually, it wasn't that difficult. This is what's really weird, Brian, is I think so many people's idea of something impossible in their mind, the idea of it is the block. For me, that's what it was for years and years. The idea of the thing I thought I wanted or the place I wanted to be seemed so far away. And that is what blocked me from taking the first steps to do it. Or I would dabble in it and then I would quit, And what I've learned is that when you have a clear path, which you talk about in setting goals, when you have a clear path and clear steps to take, it's really not that hard once you make the decision, once you truly are honest with yourself about it and make the decision to do it. For me, it was like, oh, this is what I have to do. Oh, that's simple. It's not easy every day, but it's simple. And I show up and do the thing, and voila. It's like, if I would have known that it was actually attainable all these years ago, I would have started so much sooner. And that's why, when I talk to people, I'm so inspired and I encourage so much, is because it's like, I'm not special. You've said this before, right? You've said about yourself, I'm not special. I don't feel special at all. I'm the same person I was before. And anybody can do this, Brian. Literally anybody that sets their mind, they can do it. And it's not through willpower, it's through discipline. And it sure does help to have people supporting you along the way, helping you find the path. That was the thing for me. I just didn't know what the path was. I educated myself on things I didn't know before. And then I just said, okay. And the other thing that helped me too was I didn't, now there were times when I did, but I've been working on it. I didn't, when I got something wrong or I failed, I stopped looking at it as a, beat down moment, as much as a learning step to the next thing, right? And it's so crazy to me because I've heard so many people talk about all these things, including you, for years. And they just seemed like ideas that went in one ear and out the other for so long, right? And I don't know what changed, but now I've actually applied those things and oh my gosh, they work. What a concept, right? And I'm just grateful. So thank you for everything that you've taught me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Hey guys, I want to offer you something that is a personal touch, something special that I can share with you to help you grow and develop along this journey in this path as a defender. And what I'm offering is a monthly live call that you can participate in. And we're going to be talking about the 4 areas that I believe all defenders of life should be strong in. And those are physical fitness, emotional fitness, spiritual fitness, and training. So if you're interested in learning about those things and developing yourself throughout that journey, I'm here to help you. And I want my paid subscribers to have that personal touch of getting to talk with me one-on-one in this group call and sharing with others and encouraging others along this path. So if you'd like to get in on those calls, go to defenders-live.com, become a paid subscriber. I cannot wait to see you there. And thank you so much for your support of Defenders Live.
The one chance we have at true immortality is leaving this place better than we entered it. And the only thing to invest in is always people. Everything else will fade. And watching somebody grow and knowing they're going to help other people grow is a very fulfilling way to live your life. It is the ultimate of Jesus's teachings, to live the way and to be a part of it and to help people grow and to see the difference, to be the truthful teacher. Not the one that makes you feel good, but the one that wakes you up, and it's uncomfortable. And I watch so many people create prisons, these prisons of their own suffering, and basically they're miserable all day long and they only have a couple of bad habits they look forward to that give them relief,
Been there.
But the other side of it is you can open that door and you can choose the way that you live, choose the moments and how you live. And then everything gets much easier. And but it's so scary to open those doors, and fear is the true enemy of it. I'll say this too. Most of us have been taught failure aversion. We avoid failure at all costs, but I was just listening to Huberman and he was talking about the neuroplasticity of the brain, and only real learning can happen when there's actual errors. Like the different part of your brain activates, you make an error. So then you create real neuroplasticity so the brain can change its patterns. Most of the ways that we were taught to learn to grow were incorrect. Mistake, be self-reliant. All those things trap us because we avoid the failure and then we don't reach for help and we don't see that we too can get to the same goal as everybody else can, that it's not a special destination. It's just the willingness to step forward.
It's totally true. And it's like the most courageous thing in the world to just be honest sometimes. And also the other thing I've learned too, and I'm not saying I'm like perfect at any of this. No one is. I mean, I'm a mess. We're all a mess at times in our lives. But having true compassion for myself is something that I've had to learn. And it's not always been easy. But I can tell you that I never saw the value in it until I went on that 10-mile run. And when I had true compassion for myself in that run, it's like it allowed me, it unlocked this new level of joy and celebration that I never allowed myself to experience before. And it's like I'd been holding back this gift for so long that was available this whole time. And for whatever reason, I didn't value myself enough, or I didn't feel like I was worthy. I don't know what it was exactly, but probably some of those things. And when I just like, I guess, looked at myself through a new lens, I mean, I literally had gratitude for my legs the last mile of the race. Like, they were in pure pain, pure pain.
Yep.
You know, and instead of being like, toughen up, you know, all that kind of thing, I was just like, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for allowing my legs to even like be working right now. This is miraculous. I have never run this far in my entire life. It is, 3 times longer than I've ever run. Like, I didn't know, Brian, that I was capable of that. I didn't know I was capable of that. And I still wouldn't know that if I hadn't taken the chance to just be curious and wonder. And someone asked me on my group, like, did you prep for that run? No, I didn't plan on doing that run. It wasn't even on my radar until the day I did it. And I said the only way I got through that run were 2 things: curiosity and grit. And I took care of myself through the run too. There were times I had to walk for a little bit and then start again, and I think that's compassion too. It's like, yeah, there's limitations, but if I just keep resetting the goalpost as I move along here, I can get to the next thing. I can get to the next thing. It's not about, you talk about being outcome focused or process focused. The only way I got through that 10-mile run was being process focused. It was just being where I am right now, meeting me where I'm at. What's the next goal? And usually it was like the next hill or the next, whatever in my mind, keep looking ahead, keep going forward. And I think it's so symbolic of life. That entire run was incredibly symbolic of life, because there were moments in that run where I was the lowest of low. And there were moments when I was the highest of high, just feeling like I was, floating, across the ground. And so it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And I can kind of see why people get addicted to it now.
It's what we're missing, though, isn't it? It's the ritual. It's the symbology. It's, we used to have these sort of things as human beings, and we had teachers, we had mentors, and we had rites of passage. And now people are so distraught because life is so easy for them. And they feel no meaning in it. And, when you're talking about that as an athlete, we call it the eternal now. There's just now. There's no future. There's no past. It's just now. And it's interesting. It lights up the gratitude section of the brain. Because you become so fully immersed and so fully present, and every step has a symbol, has a meaning. Every distance is a victory. Every pursuit of it. And that's whether I'm teaching shooting or anything else, that's the nature of it, that we need this passage for us, because, we think in symbols. We love the symbology. And if whatever your religious persuasion, if you look at the Bible, it's full of passages of the symbols and the rituals, from Jesus sitting on a mountain for 40 days by himself. These are rites of passage of suffering that give meaning to what we do. And without the crazy thing is, without the suffering, there's no joy. You can't feel it because you don't know what it is anymore, and it's just a beautiful experience to hear you paint that. And it's just the willingness to take the next step.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's a living life with more richness. So the joy I can experience more genuinely, and the pain I can know that is temporary and move through, instead of like, after the physical pain is over, like holding on to it and carrying it with me in life. Like, I can leave it where it is now. Yes. Yeah, and that is a really big deal. I've not always been able to do that, so. It's just really crazy. This has been, like I said, 3 years in the making. It's not like this run by itself. It was almost like this run was symbolic of the last 3 years in a lot of ways. Yeah. Well,
there's the rule of 3 again. It takes 3 seconds to make a change, and 3 minutes to make it meaningful, and 3 hours to practice it. And then it takes 3 weeks for it to become yours, and 3 months to make one habit change. So in 3 years, you've made 12 meaningful changes in your life. And you become a new person in 1,000 days, roughly. You have become something new, but still the same. a better version of yourself that's been filtered. All the excess baggage goes away. And then, like, I'm at the other end, in my life, because I'm 60 now. And most of the things that, fighting was the great joy. People will never understand this, but there's a deep connection between fighting somebody where you're connected forever. And it's that dance of suffering together and seeing whose will is going to prevail in that moment. And there's a deep, respectful thing. And, I miss that. So I fight other things now, that are me. I try to fight people's battles for them. I try to create a positive advocacy where they can learn from the failure, that the failure really is, the obstacle is the way. We'll just mix all my metaphors with the Stoics, but the obstacle is the way. Whatever's standing in your way is the thing you have to overcome. And Morgan Freeman said it best, be careful what you pray for, because you're going to get a chance to exercise it. You don't pray for strength. What happens is you get the trial of strength. And then you're either found wanting and you have to do it again, or you succeed and the next trial gets bigger.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've reframed a lot of interactions in my life now. I just realized this as opportunities. So interactions that I have with people that are difficult interactions for me to have, that in the past I would have kind of avoided, are not that I get excited about it, but I see it differently now as an opportunity to utilize skills I've learned and to grow in that moment. And not always does it work. Sometimes I get emotionally hijacked and I get sucked back into old patterns, but I usually recognize that pretty quickly and I can course correct now. Whereas before I just had no understanding of what was really going on. And so that's been a huge growth curve for me as well. And again, I'm not always great at it. I wanted to circle back on something too, which is, I think that one of the things I admire about you as well is that you are always excited about learning new things. And I'm just curious if are there any new things you've learned about yourself recently through some of your struggles? And from a firearms trainer perspective, are there any new concepts or ideas you're excited about that you're looking at differently?
So the one exercise that was left available to me is zone 2 cardio. I can do as much of that as I want. And the suggestion is do 150, 180 minutes a week. Yeah. And as a big guy, it's always been difficult. And then, I have a reconstructed ankle, so running's kind of out of it, but I've been able to rebuild that. And my relationship with cardio has changed tremendously, where I look forward to it. I relish it. And the hour I spend doing it, or 30 minutes, is something. And I found a new endurance phase of my being, that I didn't have before. I had it when I was a younger fighter, but we had to run. It was something we did and we didn't like, but now it's actually the exercise. And I found myself spending more time, Adam just hosted me, and I took walks in the desert, around his house, and got to see all these, there were beautiful percherons all over this ranch out there.
Really?
And they were super curious about me because, it was feeding time. So they thought maybe the new dude had some hay with him. But, it's very different that, I'm embracing this new exercise. Like, I can still lift and do things like that, but the cardio is exceptionally important to me because I wanted to stay off beta blockers and statins and all that. So I'm not being medicated for anything now because I'm doing the right thing. So
that's good.
That was great. As an instructor, I've been thinking a lot about why rules don't work, and how to help people form better habits, because we have so many safety briefs we give are so ineffectual. Because I thought about with cars, like cars are super safe now in comparison. We have better tires, we have better brakes, we have management systems, we have airbags. And so fatalities have gone down, but accidents have gone up because apparently if you tell people they're safe, then they decide to drive recklessly. And we're maliciously creative as human beings. And I've been through enough safety briefs in my life where I could go without another one. And, but people think they're safe. So what I came up with is an idea of what are the living exemplifications of the safety rules. And, you and I have talked about this before, and now I've got it down to a path. I'm teaching a Zoom class online to do it, and then I'm opening every class with it. And it's been really useful to watch because now I can get people, when something goes on, I'm guilty of Rule 1 violations frequently, knowing the condition of my weapon because I shoot at a high speed. So, 3 or 4 bill drills in, I'm going to go empty. And it drives me nuts. My gun comes out and I get a click instead of a bang, and I've got a dead man's gun, the whole thing. And I was like, why don't I do a better job with that? Well, I've made it a priority to teach that in my class.
That's good.
And hold myself accountable. And when somebody has a problem, I say, hey, that's a Rule 1 violation. Tell me what that means. And they're like, yeah, I didn't really keep the gun loaded in check. So now I know I'm going to do it. And I'm trying to put action with rule now. And give people a chance to practice the right actions instead of it. But the fight for an instructor is always, we feel like we have to start at the very beginning and move forward. We have to give the safety brief and they can't handle guns. So, there's a bit of risky behavior that we have to, at some point we're going to risk them doing something. How can I get them more ready for all the things I'm going to ask them to do? And it's kind of changed my mind about the way I approach everything. The structure's good, but if it doesn't serve us anymore, don't we have to do something different?
Totally. I really have to say, I really enjoyed the class. So, Brian had a Zoom call, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think, and I think it was called Bringing the Firearm Safety Rules to Life or something like that. And you can go to thecompletecombatant.com and you can look up his next one. I think it'll be in the fall, if I'm not mistaken. But that class was worth more than what I paid for it, for sure. I did not expect it to be so interactive. It was incredibly interactive. And of course, we established safety right out of the get-go. All the guns were dry. Shelley was really good at making sure that everyone had a flag, so we all knew all the guns were empty and everything. But it was a lot of fun, and it was really cool to see everyone participating. It was very encouraging. The vibe was really good because I was like thinking, how much can you do virtually over a Zoom call? You know what I mean? But man, I was surprised. I was surprised pleasantly. So I would encourage anyone, really doesn't matter where you're at on your path in the firearms journey. This would be a valuable class. And especially if you're an instructor, you'll learn a lot from Brian, and you'll learn about just observing him and the way he teaches. You'll be able to learn a lot as well. So really valuable class. I would encourage anyone to attend for sure.
It was interesting for me too, because I'm such a face-to-face person. It was very difficult teaching that way for me. And then I made the mistake and I did it on my iPad. So everybody was this big. I couldn't see people. So we had extra instructors. And that was it. But it was once again, something that I was avoiding. I want to teach in person, and but this is an easier way to reach people, and it was good for my growth as an instructor. And then now every class starts off like we started off, and I know I'm just teaching another dry practice session for people, but I'm teaching them a meaningful dry practice session, which led to a new thing. Now I've got 4 ways to dry practice that I teach in class, and then I've created a new catalog because people want more guns classes. So I have an integrated arms class and I have a defensive pistol class, and so you never know where your change is going to lead you. And I think that's the fear, where am I going? I don't know exactly, if I do the same thing wrong every time, at least I can be comfortable about it.
At least it's familiar.
It's super familiar. So this is, I'm not through this yet. I don't have any good answers. I still have a couple of health things going on, but I'm doing pretty well. I've been on the road. So, but it's definitely changed me. And I always was, I believe in memento mori, death comes for us all. And, but now I really feel the timer, and there's just no time to waste. There never has been, and now there's even less. And I think I'm more present when I teach now. I can feel it. Like I never look at anybody and think, well, I get to see him again.
Right.
This is it. These moments that we share together are what we get. And I'm grateful enough that it was a small enough thing where I can continue to teach and travel. But now I know it may not be forever,
Yeah. And people say that all the time, that we only have today. We don't know if we have tomorrow, but do we really live our lives in that way? Yeah. So it's a good reminder for sure.
Like you were talking about, it changes the way you interact with people too. That's the only thing we really have control over is our interactions, the depth of our interactions. And I found that I have more grace for people, but I'm also a bit more brutal in certain ways, of not cutting as easily. I've less time, try to find a way to get to the lesson quicker, and not think, well, it'll happen somewhere along this 2-day class.
Wow. A lot of insight that really makes me think about my life differently too. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Montana in July.
Me too.
I hope. I think there's only like 2 spots left in that class. So if any of you that are watching want to get in on that class in Montana, it's the Inner Game of Shooting with Brian Hill. I would say one of your best classes of all time. They're all really good, though. They're all really up there, but it's one of my favorites. So
but this one's in Montana.
I know, in July. So it's
in July.
Perfect. Yes.
It doesn't get much better.
It really doesn't. We're only an hour away from Bozeman. You could hit Yellowstone while you're here if you wanted to. Lots of great opportunity for a nice vacation, and you get to train with Brian Hill. I mean, what more could a person want? If you're interested in that class, you can go to thecompletecombatant.com. You can sign up. Maybe you can get one of the last spots available. But I can't tell you how excited I am. Just be prepared, because the Tigger side of me will probably come out when I see you. I have this bouncy, dancy, excited thing that I do often. And I used to kind of repress it and be careful about when I did it. But man, I'm just living life more fully now and embracing who God made me to be. I'm stepping into it now, and in part thanks to you. And I'm so grateful, so grateful. So appreciate your time with me today, Brian.
Well, this is the joy of fellowship, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is, having great friends, even though this is such a unique world that we live in. You and I can have a good, deep friendship, even though we're thousands of miles apart.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. As much as we all hate the internet occasionally, that's one thing I really notice. And, your spirit is a horse, I'm sure. And, horses dance, so get after dancing and have that joyous moment. And my one thing to say, so many of us live for other people's expectations.
Yeah.
And they're never happy with us anyway. Mm-hmm. No matter what we do, they're never happy for us, in that way. But our good friends are the ones that celebrate our victories and sit with us while we suffer. Yeah. And we should be the same sort of friend to ourselves, always, and it's a great opportunity to talk about these things, and hopefully I don't know if it inspires people, but hopefully it'll motivate people I think it'll inspire them to get up and do it, because we have intrinsic motivators that we all have to have, and that's passion, purpose, curiosity, mastery, and autonomy. And these are the only reasons you do things. It's got to be your idea, and you want to be a better version of yourself, and it's got to be something interesting, and it's something that calls to you, and then you've got to feel deep passion. And I distrust people without passion inside them. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'd rather you get angry or you laugh too hard. I want passion in people. I want them to be alive and full of themselves. And, nobody's a cold cyborg. Like, a friend of mine is a very high level performer. Yeah, and we've had deep talks about it, and everybody's like, he's so cool. And sometimes I get this too. I look a little bit like a robot, but it ain't like that on the inside. Yeah. It's a hurricane in there. It's an absolute mess for all of us. So totally agree. I'll still never forget the day that I found out you were a mess on the inside, because you seemed like the opposite of that on the outside. I was actually relieved, I think, in some way, because I'm like, he is just a human, just like me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Shelley encourages me to make mistakes in front of people and to let my sense of humor out too. Yeah. She's like, they don't know you the way I do, and they should, and she goes, it's okay if you make a mistake occasionally, and sometimes it doesn't happen so much in shooting class, because I practice, and most people don't notice the mistakes. So now I point them out and say, this is my mistake. You point them out and tell a silly joke about it. And that's what you're doing in that moment, Brian. You're being a good role model. You're showing them how to do it. Yeah. Because we're all going to mess up at some point, and conversation you have with yourself after that is what matters, and how you frame it in your mind and what you do about it. So in that moment you are demonstrating, you're literally demoing failure, which is exactly what we need. Yep. Yeah. Isn't it funny how we avoid all the meaningful things? So I've been avoiding them most of my life. Me too. But I didn't realize it. Yeah, I didn't realize it until a few people showed me a different way. So I'm just full of joy and gratitude, and I got more zeal now than I think I've ever had before. Yeah. Yeah. But you've collected a lot of good people, you really have. And so that speaks highly of you, because like attracts like, And I know you've said it to me, and I'm sure you've said it to Adam and other people. I don't know why you guys spend the time or what you see in me, but now you know. Yeah. And it's some people have this ability to want to improve, and I feel bad for the ones that don't, because it must be really tough. I really feel for them to be stuck. And, I feel for them too. I see so much potential in people on the daily.
that they don't see in themselves, and it just hurts my heart,
Yeah.
that they won't step into it. And I almost didn't either, but
Well, we need teachers like this that believe in the best versions of ourselves.
yeah.
One of the problems with education is it's become a guided learning, provide the answer, you repeat the answer, and therefore you're educated. But, as our journey has been, it's been more questions than it's been answers, and drawing your mind to the program that runs behind your eyes is super empowering at the end of the day. Oh my gosh.
That is really what it all boils down to, because I would say my transformation's been from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what else I've learned that I think a lot of people still haven't learned yet, or maybe they just don't want to admit the truth of it, is that there is no silver bullet to anything.
No.
There's no silver bullet, but it is a simple path generally to get, a lot of times, to get where you want it. I've found it to be a lot more simple than what I imagined it to be, and I was making it complicated. When really it was just very simple, and do the thing and show up every day and do the thing. That was really it. Just run the play, run the play. And the results just come out of that daily effort. And it's not even 110% effort every day. It's just consistent. No. I think that's another fallacy that people think. Yeah.
There's no such thing as 110% effort.
No,
it needs to be more. And really what it needs from us is about 80% most of the time. And some days it's 60 and some days it's 90. But mostly it's about showing up and doing just enough. And listen, I speak to your audience with the utmost humility. I in no way am I perfect at any of this. But the one thing that I've got in spades to do my job is that I'm going to learn from whatever I'm doing. And when I make mistakes, I'll be honest about it. And I say this in class. Future Brian's rather ashamed of anything I'm saying right now. He has to be, because he's learned some lessons from what this. And I'm definitely ashamed of some of the things past Brian's done. Yeah. But I will offer this to everybody. If you think it's time for change, don't wait. It's not going to happen in the future. It's going to happen in that moment where you say, and now is the time I begin.
Totally right. Yeah. Yep.
Hey, that was a good one.
That was a good one. Write that down, people. Quote of the day. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for your time. I can't wait to see you in Montana in July. And you've been an inspiration to me. And I'll continue praying for you and for Shelly and for your family. I'm just really, really honored that you came back on again. I don't know how many times it's been now, but you're always available. And I just really appreciate you.
Well, I'm so grateful to you and to your audience, and there were so many kind messages and so much support, and it was just wonderful. People just reaching out and, offering help and offering prayers, and all that makes a difference. It's sometimes I feel I'm a little more uncomfortable with that kind of attention because of my background, and people offering love and support. I feel myself fidget occasionally about that. So it was really wonderful. And I just can't help but appreciate everybody. And this has been a great venue for doing that. And thank you to your audience. And thank you most of all for stepping into this job and doing it. It's important.
Still going strong, Brian Hill. Still going strong. Yeah.
I know.
Until next time.
I hope I can make 20 more appearances. So
start counting down.
Yeah, just don't make them every month,